So the first thing you want to do is you want to know your size. Even if you're still in the process of building your Photoshop file, or if you're doing a Photoshop, or your Illustrator file, if you're doing an Illustrator, you should have a good sense of what your size is. And so in Photoshop, I'm going to go to Image and Image Size. And this tells me that's 15 inches by 15 inches by 300 pixels per inch. Okay? So I'm going to jump over here to Illustrator, and I'm just going to make a new document. And in all honesty, I can make the document size anything I want because I'm going to just do some copying and pasting to Photoshop in the end. So I'm going to just hide my artboard. I'll go to View and hide artboards, and then it just becomes one big, artboard that I can draw on. So I'm going to make a box. Okay, so I'll take my rectangle tool, and I'm going to just click once. And I'm going to type in 15 and 15 and say, okay. And there I go. There's my box, right? And so that is how large the actual stamp is that was designed. So I bet when Ashley designed it, she was thinking that that's how big the stamp would be, right? So essentially what I want to do is I want to go ahead and build my stamp frame at the same exact size, and then I can decide after the fact, will I make my frame a little bit bigger or will I make my stamp a little bit smaller? I can scale a little bit. It's okay if we're just kind of in the ballpark, as long as we have the right ratios. That's really what's important to us. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to go to Object, Transform, and I'm going to say Scale. And I'm going to make a smaller one that's going to go inside of here. Maybe like around, 90% or something like that. That might work. Maybe like an 87%, okay? Something that you feel is going to work out okay for you, and you'll say okay, or you'll say copy. Now, if I had a rectangle here, let's say I had 15 by 12 instead, and I went and did that same thing. If I did Object, Transform, and Scale, and I said copy to that, what you're going to get is this. You're going to get one edge that's going to feel wider than this one, right? That makes sense, right? Because we're taking something that's not a perfect square and we're scaling it, so it's not going to be perfect. So what I recommend in those situations is just kind of like a simple little trick, and that is I'm going to take another rectangle, another square, and I don't care what side you decide. I'm going to use the bigger side because I think it just works out a little bit better, and I'm just going to line up a square right there, just like this. And I have it turned off, I think, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's on. I'm going to go to View and Snapping, right? And I want snapping on. Everything's turned off at the moment. Smart Guides, they're on now. And I want snapping on as well. So I'll say snap to point. And then this way, what'll essentially allow this to do is allow me to just kind of go ahead and make sure that these things, get really tight together. And I'll just make this, like a black box. Just like that. So then I'll take that black box and I'll move it up here, and then that'll give me just basically an idea of where I should go ahead and I should move that other one down to, just like this. So it's just like a template that I'm creating for myself. My dad used to be a woodworker, and we would call these in woodworking, these are called jigs. Essentially, we're just making a template of sorts, and that's just a quick and easy way. It's way easier than going ahead and saying well, I want this one to be 87% wide, and then I want this other one to be 85% tall. It's so much easier to just do it at a full percentage, height and width, and then pick the one you like. And then just move those things around. People try to do it just by eye though, and it's out of whack when that happens. So so that's what we have going on. So I'm gonna go back to my square here since that's what I have to work with. And essentially what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to now grab a circle, and I'm just gonna make a little ellipse. And how big you make it is all on you, okay? I like to make them a little bit smaller myself. Like, that size looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to literally just kind of line this up right there on the edge. I'm going to take another one and I'm going to drag it right over to this edge over here. So I've got a circle here. I've got a circle here, right? I'm going to use this command called blend. And there's a tool and there's a command, so I'll show you both. So if I go ahead and I select both of these circles here, I can go to Object and Blend, and I can make it, but first I'm going to do this thing that says Blend Options. And essentially, what I can do here is I can decide on what kind of spacing I want. So I can say smooth color, specified steps, or specified distance. So I'm going to say specified steps. And then I can choose a number, and that number is the amount of circles that will live inside of here. So a lot of times it's kind of hard to figure that thing out visually to see if it's going to work. So what I recommend doing is simply just going ahead and just throwing out the default number of 8 and just say okay to this. Now, Adobe does stupid stuff, and this is one of those examples because in blend options, there's a little box that says preview. That just never works, okay? Don't know why. I've done this a ton of times. I can't make it work. I might be doing something incorrectly, but I don't think I am. Also, when you say okay, nothing happens because all you did was just change the option. You didn't actually make the blend happen yet. If I designed Illustrator, I would make a preview box that works, and I would also go ahead and when you said okay, something would happen. But I didn't design Illustrator. I just have to get stuck with it to teach it. So anyway, I'm going to go to Object and Blend, and now I'm going to say Make. And that's what you get. You get a bunch of circles. You get 8 more in there. And visually speaking, that works pretty good. And they're all they all have the same exact distance apart from one another, which is also good, right? So we have this. Given the fact that it's a square, it makes our life a lot easier because, we're going to simply be able to just click and drag that down. So if I select this and I hold down the Option key, I get the double stealth bombers. I'll click, hold the Shift key, and drag. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and do it again. Except I'm going to rotate it. But before I actually put that one in place, I'm going to take these horizontal ones, and I'm going to say Object and Expand. And then what they will do is they will actually expand into individual shapes. Because right now they're not an individual shape. They're this weird kind of like meshy thing. Because watch, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and take one of these. And if I just drag this out further, like it just increases the space there. And if I went ahead and I brought them closer together, it just decreases the space there. It's this relationship they have when it's in the blend. I don't want that relationship anymore, so I want to expand them so they become their own things. So I'll go to Object and Expand and say okay to that. And now they're circles. And then I'll just say Object and an Ungroup. So then that way I can select them individually of one another. And I want to do that because I don't need these corner ones, right? Because I got them right here. I could have done the same thing over here, but I just decided to do it on these ones, that's all. So Object, Expand, okay. Object, Ungroup, and then delete, delete. Take this one, throw it into place. Duplicate it over here, right into place. Grab both of those things, Object Expand, okay. Object Ungroup, okay. So now we got a bunch of these things here, all right? Is that a question, Mike, or? Okay, that's cool. So anyway, I'm going to apply some colors so this starts to look a little bit different, right? And so I'm going to take this, I'm just going to make it, I don't know, yellowish, okay? And I'll take that back circle, or excuse me, that back square, and I'll make that kind of blue. And then the circles, I'm going to select all of them. And I'll make those red, okay? Just so we can see them. Now, this yellow box, I'm going to just go ahead and say object and lock. I'm just going to just lock it. I could lock it, I could move it, I can do a bunch of things, but I'm going to lock it, which just means that like I can go ahead and I can do this and I don't touch the yellow. I lock stuff all the time in Illustrator, so then that way like I can make big selections without even worrying about touching them, and then when I need to I can go and unlock it, which I will in a minute, so you can see how to do that. So I'm going to grab all of these things, and you see how like these red little balls, these red little circles are sitting on top of, you know, this blue square. So I'll grab all of these things, and then I'm going to come over here to my Pathfinder, and we have a bunch of these things here, and we're going to use this one that says minus front. So what it's going to do is it's going to take all those little circles, and it's going to just cut into the actual square, which gives us that scallop. So that is Pathfinder. It's the second one on the shape modes. It's called minus front. So we do that, and bam, you have that. But I lost my yellow box, right? I really didn't. It's there. It's just, if we think about like how these things were layered, we had the blue box all the way in the background, and then we had the yellow box in the middle ground, and then the red circles were in the foreground, right? So if I go ahead and I grab all these things and I do the minus front, what it does is it forces that blue box to the foreground. So it just moves it up in the arrangements of the layer. That's all. And so if I said object arrange and send it back, there's our yellow right there. So now, watch. I'll say object and unlock all. And now I've got yellow sitting in front of the blue, right? So I'm going to come back here to my Pathfinder, and I'm going to use the exclude command, and boom. And now I just pop the hole inside of there. And now I have a frame. And then I can take that frame, and I'm going to color it white. And I'm not going to color it white. I'm going to color it black, just so we can see it. And I don't want a stroke on it, because stamps don't have strokes, right? They just don't. We might put one on just so we see what we're doing, but they really don't have strokes. But I'm going to make mine black, and I'm going to bring this to Photoshop. But before I do, let's take a look at a rectangle, because a rectangle is different, right? So what can we do there? Can we do the same thing? Well, kinda, sorta. We're going to start with a circle over here and a circle over here, and we're going to do the same thing, and we'll make our blend. Okay, so we get 8 of them inside there. All right, and I'll drag this thing down here. Okay, looks right. Now let's take this one and let's just bring it off to the side and rotate it just like I did before. And oh, look at that. Not quite right. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just kind of line this up here, kind of like this, and see where the kind of issue might lie. And all right, so I see that I got, you know, between this dot and this dot, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Okay, so just keep that number on your mind. That's all. So we'll take these things and we'll say object and expand, okay, object and ungroup, okay, and then I'll take this one and this one. And let's go to object and blend again, but instead of going and just saying make, let's go to blend options and type in 6 and say all right to that. And now watch. Object, blend, and make. Now, that space between this and this and the space between this and this are not the same, but they are so close to one another that you're not going to notice it. I'll know it, and you'll know it. You know who's not going to know it? Your viewer, okay? Because you're talking about like 1/16 of an inch. Especially when this is stamp size, they're really not going to know it, because now you're talking about centimeters, okay? So Now I can take this thing and I can go ahead and I can bring it over to the other side, just like this. I can get rid of these other circles though. I can drag this right over here, expand upon those a little bit more, ungroup those. For anybody who is absent today and watches this video, you got to miss the best day of class because we have the most annoying hammering happening ever. Yeah, I'm posting this on the internet, so that's why I said that. So I'm grabbing all of these things. Okay. And I'll just group them so that I can do one quick grab. You can do a Pathfinder with a group, or you can do it without a group. It doesn't matter. I'll apply the colors just again so we see what we're doing. So I'll make this middle one, I'll make that this kind of like seafoam, say object and lock. And then I'll grab this one here and I'll make it, I don't know, like a yellowish, right? And watch, grab all these things and the same thing. Minus front, object arrange send to back, object unlock all, and then grab these two things and exclude. And again, to the naked eye, again, we know, right? But to the naked eye, there's not, these circles here are the same size as these circles here. And the spacing here is very close. You wouldn't know. You just really wouldn't notice it. What will notice it is when you have perfect circles on your horizontals, and then for one reason or another, you like pull them and you have ellipses. And that will be really noticeable. But this won't be that bad. So I've got some options here, right? I have a square, so I'm going to work with the square. So I'll select that and say edit and copy. And I'm going to come over here, and this is my layered document, by the way, right? So I'm going to just duplicate this. If you guys don't do this on a regular basis, sometimes people do save as-is and then they flatten. I used to do that. I have become paranoid as I've gotten older, though. So I'm going to go to image and duplicate instead. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and I'll say AB stamp. This is Ashley, so I'm just going to call it flat because I plan to flatten it. And I'll say okay to that. And watch. Flatten the image. And I'm going to jump back to Illustrator and grab this thing and say edit and copy. And come back over here to Photoshop and just do an edit and paste or Command V. And I can paste it however I want. I'm just going to paste it as pixels. And hey, wow, look at that, perfect size. Why is it a perfect size? Because I measured it to begin with. I measured, I figured out it was 15 by 15, and I made my box 15 by 15, right? So then I know it's going to work. So yeah, great. We'll go ahead and we'll do that. And so we have that thing here, and it's in front of the stamp. But we've got all that other stuff happen in the stamp. So I'll take my stamp, I'll make it so it's not a background layer, and I'll just transform it. And I'll just go ahead and I'll scale it a little bit. And you can... What I don't recommend is like going into the stamp like this so that way there's like, a gap. If you go right up to the edge, that could work. If you want to cover it up a little bit, that could work too. And like do a little bit of a bleed, that can work as well. I'm doing it flat right now, which, is, definitely something I could do. I could also do it over here with my layers. And that could also work if I put it all the way on the top. Because I could scale the background and Sailor Moon here, right? I could scale those things. So I could scale this whole color. Scale her. Scale my background. Oops. Scale my cloud shadows. This would be so much easier if I just went ahead and I linked all these together. So I'm gonna. Look at that. And then if I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could move these things around a little bit more on their own. So the 70 here, oops, and probably this layer right here. If I link those, there I can move them around a little on their own. Scale them if necessary. I could take this one, move that in here, scale it with a Command or Control T if you have a PC. So you have options is all I'm getting at, right? So you can just scale it this way with one flat object, or you can come over here and you can play around with it a little bit more, scale it that way. Totally however you want to do it. I like to do it this way just because I figure like if I'm going to create something, I want one giant scale. But again, up to you. I don't care how you do it. I'm gonna go ahead and my layer here that's from my stamp, and I'm gonna go ahead and label that. So that's scallop, and here is portrait. And on my scallop layer, I'm gonna go to layer effects and just do a color overlay. And I do not want bright green. In fact, I want white. And I want it all the way up to 100%. And you can kind of see it because it's on the checkerboard, right? But it's going to be tough when I flatten this thing, and I want to flatten it to print. So I might just do something like this. I might just do an outer glow, and I might make my outer glow black. And this way I can kind of just control the size of it a little bit more. That's one way that I could do it, right? And let's simulate what this thing will look like when it's flattened by just going ahead and putting a white background there. So, oh man, we don't see our outer glow. Why not? Because our blend mode is screen. So if I bring this up to normal, there's our outer glow. We can see it. So an outer glow could work, right? And it'll just be softer than having a stroke mark there. So that could work out for you. Another thing you could do is, I've seen people do just a drop shadow. That works too, okay? Again, it's just giving the appearance that this thing has got some sort of something going on in it, right? It's not that it's a stamp, right? It's got that happening. What you don't want to do, there's the don'ts too, like the things you don't want to do. I'm going to just backtrack a little bit. Undo a little bit here. Object and unlock. Please don't make a stamp that has got a width of like this. You smile and laugh, like who would do that? And I would say probably 20% of the people who've done this project would do that. That's rough estimate. But yeah, I see it all the time where it's like, that's great. Like you bought the portrait for the frame, huh? Like, it's like, it shouldn't look like that. It should look like this. The image is the star. This is just, the thing that makes it look like an actual stamp, right? So that's definitely something that you want to kind of be aware of. So last, but certainly not least, all right, is this. I don't want to flatten this thing, okay? Because if I straight up flatten it, I'm going to run into some issues. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and I want to merge layers. So I like to just merge visible, so I just turn off what I don't want, and in this case, it's going to be this. And watch, I'm going to click on this, I'm going to say merge visible. So now this puts the scallop and the portrait on one layer, okay? So I'll call it Sailor Stamp, because that's what it is. In fact, I'll call it Sailor Stamp Big, because that's what it is, right? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just do this. I'm going to say image and duplicate one more time and say, yeah. So I have the stamp flat, and I'm going to call it small and say okay. So I've got my layers, I've got my flat, now I've got my flat small, right? And so if this thing was 15 by 15, we can scale it down all the way to 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. Let's do 2 by 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and say view and make a guide. How about vertical 6 inches? It just makes a line right there for us. I'm going to go ahead and say view and make another guide at 8 inches. Right there I have a 2-inch kind of box to work in, or actually not a box but perpendicular lines. So let's go ahead and let's go to view and new guide, and let's throw that 8 inches. Just I'm looking at this number 8 over here, and I'll just make it horizontal. There's a line right there, and then I'll say view new guide, and I'll put it at 6 and horizontal, and hey, check it out right there. This is a 2 by 2 inch box. So I'll grab my stamp and I'll make it smaller. And snapping's not turned on, so I'm going to go to view and snap. I want that turned on. So again, we'll make it smaller. We'll zoom in here, and I'll just literally line it up right there, and snapping's going to just make it just so it snugs right up to that. Hold my shift key down, and voila. There's my stamp at 2 inches by 2 inches. Now, when you come to critique, you can print it out, and you literally can come with a big one, and you can come with a little one, right? But can I ask you a question? Do we buy stamps like this? Like one at a time? How do we buy stamps? Sheets or books, right? Yeah. So go ahead, make a stamp sheet. It's super simple. Watch. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take my Sailor Moon stamp. Now I'm going to change the layer name too. It's called Stamp Big. I'm going to call it Stamp Small. And so I'll take my stamp over here, right? And watch. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to click. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to just drag. Just like this. Boom. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it one more time. There we are. 5 of them in a row. And since Snap was turned on, it kind of just made them snug together like that. So I got all these 5, right? Cool. I can go ahead now and watch. I'm going to select all these 5, and I'm just going to go ahead and click this thing right here and put it into a layer set or a layer group. And I'll call this Stamp 1 row. And I'll just hold down the Option key, click, drag, straight down. Option key, click, drag, straight down. Option key, click, drag, straight down. And there's a book of 20 stamps right there now. And I just want to show you, because this is Ashley's project, not mine. Okay? Let's see if I can find it. AB _ 252 stamp. So I'll find her folder, and I want to show you what she ended up handing in for her final thing, right? It was this. It was an image of Sailor Moon. There was no stamp on it, in fact. It was the portrait. But then down here, she had the stamps. And her idea was that, like, if they were going to do this, they were going to do this commemorative Sailor Moon stamp, they might have a poster where they showed the portrait, and then they went ahead and had the stamps in a, underneath it, maybe in a tearaway kind of booklet or something like that. So this was actually a nice way, this was a nice way to show it from a critique standpoint, right? So, and if you wanted to make something like that, again, back in Photoshop, all right, so File New, do something like an 11 by 17. And then here's our stamps. Let's bring them on over. Drop them in there. Just like this. And then here's our final stamp. Bring that on over. Drop it in. It's going to be really freaking big. Okay, so transform it. Make it smaller. Put it over to here. And again, if we're thinking like critique, portfolio, that sort of stuff, if that's where our mind's at, which that's where our mind should be at in many ways, I don't know, maybe you also do something like this and just say like your name, but not in that font. And like, you know, Sailor Moon. Actually, Sailor is with an O, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, in this cartoon. And then you can just say digital painting. And then let's go ahead and maybe pick a better font. Not that there's anything wrong with the Bauhaus. It's just I don't really want to look at that. I don't know. Pick something I want to look at, like Futura. There we go. 36 points going to be huge. So I'll keep my name big. And I'll make this a little smaller. And spell stamp correctly as well. And there, that's something you could bring to portfolio, or excuse me, to critique, right? Pretty easy. Save it as a JPEG. Or, if you want, bring this to critique and just this file. That could work too, you know. Technically, bringing just this could work. This one singular one. That could work. But you might, you know, presentation goes a long way. So you might, you know, want to do something that presents it in a better way as well. You can bring multiple files to critique as well. So you could show us something like this, which is cool, right? And then you could also go ahead and you could, you know, bring in the small stamp. You could bring in the, you know, the larger one if you want to zoom in. The beauty is that right now we built this at high end. We built this at 300 pixels per inch. So we can go view at 100%, and we can really get a good look at this thing. So this is the small stamp actually we're looking at right now. And then if we really want to go ahead and, from a critique standpoint, if we really wanted to get in here and look at this, that's a nice quality image that we can look at. And you can still save it as a JPEG. So save this as, I don't know, stamp, well, your tag, and then say stamp crit, and just save it as a JPEG. I did not flatten mine. You should flatten yours. I'll just toss it to my desktop at the moment. High-end JPEG. And again, in 2016, a JPEG still, if we zoom in 100%, we can see everything really well. If we want, there's the large one. We can even zoom in further. And from a critique standpoint, we'll still be able to see, you know, how things were created. So, questions? Yes.
The circles on the scallop, do they have to be circles, or can you do any shape you want for the stamps?
You don't necessarily have to do circles. Traditionally, they are circles, but like that Star Wars one over there isn't circles. It's like a hexagon kind of thing. And then the Game of Thrones one in the back aren't traditional circles either. So it's not necessary to do circles. Other questions?
What do we look for on YouTube to find this video?
Great question. I will send you a link, and then you'll be able to, it'll just be a link to a website, and you'll be able to find that. Other questions? All right. I'm ending the video. No other questions for the video? Okay. Thank you, guys.